You're joining me from here. Welcome to A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. I'm your host, Tomás Garza, and I want to, before we launch into today's idea, I want to welcome everyone here that is watching on my personal Facebook page. I have been streaming to my page, Awakening to Love, and now I'm streaming to my personal page as well. So if you're just joining me for the first time, you may know that I have had a live stream here on Enlightened World Network, which I highly recommend that you check out, since January, and it has been so much fun. I have been literally reaching people all over the world with the message of A Course in Miracles, which is nothing other than awakening to love, hence the subtitle of this live stream. So it's ACIM, A Course in Miracles 365. This is daily. So I've been coming to you live here every day, and many of you that know me know that I have been a student and a teacher of the spiritual text, A Course in Miracles, for 8 years, since 2013, and it has seen a lot of change take place in my life. Lots of positive changes have happened. I am a much different person than I was when I started out. And a lot of that is credit to this really wonderful spiritual text, which puts forth ideas of universal spirituality and absolute truth. In other words, truth with a capital T. Nothing more, nothing less. And the beauty of this is that it is a self-study course. So if you are familiar with it, you'll know that there are several components to it. One of them is called a workbook for students, and we don't have assignments like we do in high school or college or grade school or something where you have to do it or else you're going to get a failing grade. Well, it's not like that. The workbook presents a daily idea that is basic universal spirituality that applies to everything and everyone everywhere. And what we do is we practice that idea. We think about it. We may have a meditation about it. We incorporate it into our thought process and into our daily practice and our lives with the aim of changing our mind from fear to love, becoming more loving, and yes, ultimately awakening to the truth of who we really are. So you can call that whatever you want in spiritual terms: awakening, spiritual awakening, an awakening moment, a blinding flash of light, enlightenment, whatever it is, it's a process for most of us. And one of the beautiful things about A Course in Miracles is that it gives us something to do and to practice. As you might imagine, that's also one of the things that drives people away from it, is that it gives them something to do and to practice. However, from my own experience and the experience of countless other people, if you stay with these ideas and recognize that voice on your shoulder, the voice of the ego saying, you better do something else. I'm threatened here. You better go check your Twitter feed or go watch TV or something like that, then, well, and the less you listen to that voice, the more this material can speak to you. And one of the beauties of this is that it is universal in theme, it's universal in application. And honestly, it doesn't matter what your spiritual tradition or religious background is, there is something of value here in these pages, should you choose to see it. So welcome to everybody. I will be streaming this live to my own personal page now every day. Why? Because I want to reach more of you. Now, back episodes you can find here on Enlightened World Network's YouTube channel, and it's Enlightened World Network. Their YouTube channel has a playlist for every show on the network. Now, I will tell you, these are wonderful shows from a variety of show hosts across the world, and they're all to do with spirituality. So check this out. It's Enlightened World Network, and this show, A Course in Miracles 365, and all the others have their own playlist on the YouTube channel. So that's for Enlightened World Network. All right. So yesterday on the live stream, we looked at a very powerful and very foundational lesson in the workbook, lesson 70, my salvation comes from me. Now, the idea in these, if you're new to A Course in Miracles and this workbook, it's a series of daily ideas that you practice, you work with, you practice. There's an idea in bold, and then there is some commentary with some description of the idea, how one might go about putting that into practice in your life, daily life. So that's what it's all about. Now, there are 365 of them, so you could go through and do one a day for an entire year, and then you will have gone through the workbook. Is that the end? No, this is the third time that I've gone through it. And if you're familiar with this yourself, you may have done this more than 3 times, a lot more than me. I mean, I know people that have been working with this text for 30 to 35 years, and it has really monumentally transformed these folks. Some of them are going to be guests here on the live stream, so it's not always just me. I do have guests on here. I have had a few. Cindy has been here on the live stream, and Marbeth Dunn and Deb Goldberg, and a couple of others as well. Kim Venter from Atlanta. Really, really a wonderful show. And you can check these all out on the YouTube channel. More are coming up. So where I'm going with this is sometimes I like to spend more than one day on a lesson. Why? It's powerful. And sometimes in the span of 20 to 25 minutes, I may say a lot, and I do. However, sometimes there's more to say than can be covered on a very short live stream. Because really, it's just a half-hour slot every day. And in 20 to 25 minutes, you can cover a lot, but sometimes there's more. Now, today's lesson is one of those ideas where there is definitely more to it than I covered yesterday. So you will want to, if you're curious, go back and watch yesterday's episode. The idea is my salvation comes from me. That's lesson 70. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I have a couple of things that I want to add to it today. This is about being an adult spiritually. Isn't that exciting? It's about stepping up and owning the fact that we're responsible for our experience. Someone else is not responsible for our experience. We are. We are. Think about it. Think about it. What we can control is how we respond to things. People say things, they do things in the world. One political party does something, the other hates it, and they try to get back at them, right? Someone across the world says something or does something that you may or may not agree with. Happens every day, happens all the time. You might pick up your phone and read something from the news media that you agree with, or you might read something that you really disagree with and you want to say something about it. And this is life. This is our experience here in the world. And it seems like things are happening all around us that we can't control. And we would be quite right about that. All we can control when we're surrounded by chaos and people fighting people and factionalism and all of the madness that's rampant and going on in the world right now, actually always has been, is all we can control is our own response. And we have a choice in the present moment, the only moment that exists, as to whether we will respond lovingly or out of fear. Another way of looking at that is, are we choosing God, being love, or the ego, fear? Which choice we make will govern a whole string of events, a chain reaction, if you will, that dictates our experience and how people show up, treating us, looking at us, dealing with us, doing business with us or not, depending on our reactions. Yeah, all kinds of things ensue. And the point is that we're only responsible for ourselves. It's about Spirituality is about taking ownership of the power that you have. This should be exciting to you. You get to. Not you have to, you get to. You get to show up in the present moment and choose love and take and accept responsibility for the fact that you and only you are in control of your experience. Your salvation, in other words, your spiritual awakening, your happiness, if you prefer, whatever term you use, doesn't make any difference. You know where I'm going with this. It comes from you. So it's inside of all of us. Now, this also means that our own fear thoughts and our own guilt thoughts, our thoughts of unhappiness, are also inside of us. So if both happiness and unhappiness are inside of us and not external, we have a choice. And which one do you want to choose? Ideally, right? Ideally, at all times, we would, each of us, choose happiness. But as we know, all we have to do is look around us. I mean, you can examine yourself. How do you feel right now? Have you made choices today, so far today, that have led to happiness or unhappiness? We're in control of this. So we're making, this does mean that we're making our bad experiences. This also means that we can unmake them by choosing differently. It truly is that simple. We in the world want to complicate things, and well, we do. We do a really good job. We section things and people off into categories. We layer and categorize. We break things down into degrees of good, degrees of evil, degrees of difficulty. Yeah. Ultimately, we're faced with just one choice. And the more that you choose love, happiness, God instead of the ego, your guides, if you prefer a different word, spirit, source, the universe, we're all talking about the same thing here. You'll notice that A Course in Miracles uses terms like God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit that may be familiar to people with a Christian or Judeo-Christian background, but it's universal. It also uses terms from Eastern philosophy, like the ego that I've referenced here several times. So if you're a student of Hinduism or Buddhism, that will look very familiar to you. It's universal. Spirituality is universal, and it's really simple because that one choice of love or fear is the choice that we make. So there we are. We complicate things ourselves. And the central idea that I want to talk about here is, yes, our salvation comes from us. And it should be very clear, the more you think about it, that this idea places you in charge of the universe. The workbook says this. It places you in charge of the universe because of who you are. Places you in charge of the universe because of who you are. Now, who is that? I think you know. Deep down, I think you do. Yeah. A Course in Miracles says in many places, insists that we're one with God. We are the extension of love. Love only extends itself. So if you're doing the math, there you go. Yeah. We are in charge because of who we really are, which is not, by the way, the ego. If you're just new to the term, the ego, this is perfectly okay. What this means is that we run around thinking we're separate. We run around believing we're competing for supposedly scarce, finite resources against somebody else. We choose sides, we draw battle lines, we combat and go to war with each other in many different ways, whether we're aware of it or not, just by choosing separation. So that's what the ego is this sense of separation. In truth, there is no separation of any kind, and this is the premise that A Course in Miracles is coming from. So just because we're in charge of the universe doesn't mean that we shouldn't ask for help. There's a tremendous, huge, and very important place for prayer in A Course in Miracles. There is a tremendous place for meditation practice, for practicing the ideas as the workbook suggests that we do them. There's a tremendous place for all of this. Why? In order to get out of our own way and move away from the ego, it's necessary for us to call upon our guides, God, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, you name it, whoever your guides are. Again, this is universal spirituality. We're talking, it applies no matter what your background. Part of getting out of our own way is realizing, well, we may have this power within us, but we need a little help. So it is always good to call on your teacher, your guides, your source, capital S, yeah, of support for help. This is something that we can always do, despite the fact that we have this power in us. It actually helps us access that power. Why? We're disidentifying with the ego. We're saying, okay, my way hasn't exactly worked out for me. Now, has it? I mean, are you 100% constantly happy? Are you 100% constantly joyful 24/7 and always forgiving, always loving with no lapses of any kind? I mean, if you are, good on you, right? But I encourage each of us to be 100% honest with ourselves here. I mean, this is what this is all about. That's what this idea of my salvation comes from me is all about, is 100% honesty and ownership. And it's about questioning as well. It's about questioning everything that we now believe. The foundation of all of our belief systems. This is what spirituality is about. It's not just rainbows and unicorns. It's not being constantly blissed out all of the time. It's questioning, it's diligence, it's patience, and it is persistence and practice. And that is what the workbook for students of A Course in Miracles is all about. Diligence, patience, practice, and having some grace for yourself. Very important that we give ourselves a break. And just the fact that you're here watching this is wonderful. We may not do all of our exercises on a given day. I mean, I've been through this and I've forgotten the day's idea. I will habitually do a practice period in the morning. And then if the day's idea calls for repetition throughout the day, and some of them do, sometimes I forget those. And there have been several days, especially early on, the first time I went through the workbook, where I forgot the day's idea completely. So, I would say have grace for yourself. Go easy on yourself, but not too easy, because we want to continue to show up and do this work. You're here, you're watching, which tells me that you're ready to do that. Otherwise, there are millions of other things you could be watching, especially on YouTube. Yeah. So part of the deal here, if you're just joining me for the first time, is I love to interact with all of you here. Now, I'm going on to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. So thank you all for joining me here. Robert, hello, good evening to you. How are you? And thank you all for tuning in. This is something that I really enjoy. And the showtime, if you're joining me for the first time, bounces around. So what I would have you do is look at Enlightened World Network's Facebook page. If you don't like or follow that page, please do that. That has a show guide at the beginning of every day. Now, the show guide will tell you when the day's programs take place. Now, this is a short live stream. It's half an hour maximum. And what happens there is the time bounces around. So It'll be on at different times, different hours. So I thank you all for tuning in here, and feel free to leave comments or questions. I'm here to share from my own experience with this wonderful spiritual text. And I know that many of you have had questions in the past. I welcome them, whether you're catching this live or on the replay. So thank you all for joining me. My name's Tomás Garza. This has been A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love, and I will see you again here tomorrow. Thanks for joining me.